Every single week I get messages like, Ella, I spent hours and hours reading, I spent hours and hours listening to different YouTube, different podcasts, different audiobooks, what have you. It's not working out for me, what do I do? Let me tell you, it's not a matter of whether or not you're working hard. It's how you're working, how you're studying that says everything. You know, I'm a very lazy person and I don't do anything that doesn't make sense. I'm open to working hard provided that your system makes sense. This video is going to be properly titled Things Not to Do While Learning English. Rather, big no-nos. Yeah, I think that's better. Big no-nos in learning English, especially by yourself. Big no-no number 1, don't overdo it. Especially if you're a beginner. Don't sign up for every course. Don't buy every single class. Don't try to study 4 hours every single day or 5 hours. Don't try to memorize every single word. It's like going to the gym for the very first time and trying to lift the heaviest weight. I mean, it's just not smart and you're only killing your motivation by doing that. There's a time and place for you to go hard at it. But if you don't know why you're studying this, you're probably not doing it right anyway. So yeah, just chill. Just step back a little bit. Develop a system, know what you're doing. Because you could easily work on something that's actually worth your time for 2 hours. Things like pronunciation, connection with speech. You could focus on one sentence for 2 hours and be rewarded. But what you don't want to do is work on meaningless stuff. I'm not denying the value in variety. I'm not denying the value in working hard, studying hard. I'm just saying, if you don't know what you're doing, maybe cool it off first. Just because you have the time, just because you have the dedication and motivation, doesn't mean what you're doing will pay off. You gotta be smart about it. Number 2, don't focus on quantity over quality, especially in the beginning. I'm speaking purely in terms of grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary. I'm not speaking of, whether or not this app is well designed. Nothing like that. So I see a lot of people studying every single day, working really hard, doing every practice drill whatsoever, without paying attention to what these words actually mean, how to pronounce these words, and how the sentence is structured. So if they run into a different sentence that's structured the same way, they wouldn't be able to recognize that. So they're thinking, oh, I'm studying 2 different sentences. And that's just not smart. A lot of times the sentences are the same. It's just using different vocabs. When you study math, you have to know all the formulas. You have to know all the algorithms to save your time. The same thing with English too, especially with pronunciation and grammar. In terms of pronunciation, there are only 48 symbols. And if you just focus on the 48 symbols, you get different combinations, different words come out, different sentences come out, and then you can work on connection of speech. That way your pronunciation will sound more natural. But if you don't focus on the 48 symbols, if you don't focus on the pattern, you'll think, oh, all these sentences are different, all these words are different, and I have to memorize every single pronunciation. Big no-no number 3, fixate on real world words first. This happens all the time, and it doesn't just apply to English. Whatever language you're trying to learn, your textbook would usually start off with things like, oh, books, bookshelves, computers, red, blue, yellow, things that you can touch, things that you can feel, things you can identify. But learning a language is not identifying objects. You don't want to learn concrete words just yet. You want to be able to point to that thing, whatever you're talking about, and say how you feel about it. So you want to focus on abstract words, things like feelings, things like actions. You want to get to know how to use them, because a lot of times when you translate these words into Chinese, they don't match up completely. So you have to get used to a new structure, a new logic, a new way of thinking first. And then you can identify words later. When you see them in real life, when you see them in a context, when you see them in a scenario, in the case of a textbook, or when you watch television, or when you live in that environment, you can spend your time, just take your time identifying objects. And I see so many little kids fixating on words like cucumber, broccoli, or onions. I mean, how are those words gonna help you when you run into a native speaker? You're not gonna be talking about even the colors you like. You'll be talking about, oh, where you're going, how you feel, what you wanna do, what you don't like, what you like, which will bring me to my next point. Big no-no number 4, fixate on Chinese translations of the word, or fixate on translating Chinese into English, especially in the beginning. When you don't have that many words, you won't even get a sense of what's the proper way, what's the accurate word to use use in this context. So whatever you're translating, it's probably wrong, it's probably inaccurate, it's probably not understood by native speakers. What you want to do instead is focus on the context, focus on a piece of material, focus on a scenario, and try to understand it without translating. Try to understand it in the context. So the next time when a similar situation arises, you could kind of search in your head, oh, I've heard it somewhere, I've heard this phrase somewhere, I could probably use the phrase as well, safely. To give you an idea, all I could think of is the word logo. So if you were to translate logo into Chinese, sure, you could do that, but you don't really have to understand it in that way. Just show a picture of a logo. You just want to expand this idea, apply this principle to all the words, all the abstract words. What I do is look them up in a dictionary and try to see how they're used in the sentence, and that's how I get by with, sometimes not even knowing the Chinese meaning. I mean, I could translate them into Chinese for someone else in a sentence, in a full sentence, but I never dwell on the Chinese meaning of that one particular word, if that makes sense. And my next big no-no is study grammar linearly. Most people, when they see a grammar book, they get freaked out because it's so boring, and it's totally understandable because most people's association with grammar is boredom and practice drills and just memorizing a bunch of different rules, and it's completely unstructured, it's completely rigid, it doesn't make sense, it's time consuming, it's tedious, when in reality, grammar is just a bunch of formulas. So you have to know the basic structure, the basic foundation first, so like how to construct a sentence, what are the most important words, by the way, it's verbs, and everything else is just bells and whistles. You could just learn it based on context. You can just learn it along the way. You don't have to do every single practice drill, because I see it all the time. So many people understand every single word, understand the meaning of every single word, and still they have to guess the meaning of this whole sentence. You want to be able to construct the sentence from scratch, hopefully right away, and that's the meaning, that's the purpose of studying grammar. A grammar book is a reference. Whenever you have questions, you can go in and check, how should I construct this sentence? How do I conjugate this verb into the past tense, into a past participle? So yeah, to summarize my whole video, don't overdo it. Quality over quantity. Don't try to translate every single thing. Don't try to memorize every single thing. Don't try to learn grammar linearly, and don't focus on real world words. So don't worry, it's not because you're lazy, it's not because you're not smart. I think a lot of times when your method is wrong, it's not as sustainable, therefore you think you're lazy, but it's just your natural response to something that's not smart. You just try to stay away from it. That's why I don't memorize vocab. I have never memorized any vocabulary. I have never memorized any words. I tried it when I was 16. It didn't work out for me, and I've never done it ever since. So that was just my 2 cents. Please don't get offended. If you feel like your method is working out for you, if you feel like you just want quick results, you just want to memorize vocab, then you do you. I mean, all the props to you. It's just not for me. And I think for the long run, you want to go back to something that's sustainable, that doesn't depend on your memory, that doesn't depend on your superior human genes. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my big no-nos? Are there any more big no-nos that you found to be quite true in your experience? Please share with us, and then we can learn from each other. Alright, that's it for today. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, do your thing, and I'll see you next time. Bye!